Now, this is the story of two men who consider themselves presidents for life, Xi Jinping and Donald Trump. Even Donald Trump. These are two men in two of the highest offices in the world of the two greatest powers on earth. We say both of them do not fit the bill. The first one's leadership fostered a political environment that caused this pandemic. The second one's ineptitude at managing this crisis has led to thousands of deaths and an endless blame game. These are two presidents who are responsible for the mess their countries are in. Two presidents who have made their citizens suffer because of their poor leadership. Neither of them can escape the blame, but they're winning by throwing mud at each other. Let's tell you how. And we'll start with China. First, it blamed America for the pandemic. The Wuhan virus came from the US, they said. Now, China is preaching America on how not to be a failed state. The headline on your screen is from China's official mouthpiece, the Global Times. It says, Trump team is driving US to failed state status. A failed state and a pot calling the kettle black. Let me read out some excerpts that stand out in this propaganda piece. I'm quoting, "The Washington consensus is dead. The beacon of democracy, freedom and human rights that the US has long adhered to has collapsed. The US scapegoating China makes the US look like some immoral person spitting at an innocent person. It's like a bad kid who gets low marks, blames others, and even undermines their chances of passing the exam. And if it continues its willful behavior, Washington will bring disaster not only to the US, but to all of humankind." Bringing disaster to all of humankind sounds rich coming from China. But that's besides the point right now. The primary purpose of this report was to publicize an alleged Republican strategy for the US presidential election. The story has been doing the rounds. It talks about the election strategy of the Republicans. It's a fairly simple one-line plan. Blame China for everything. You see, at the beginning of this year, Donald Trump was in a very good position to win a second term. He still might. But the virus has turned the presidential election into a referendum on Trump, on his response to the outbreak. And we all know how shoddy that response has been. A few days back, American website Politico reported this. It said the National Republican Senatorial Committee had sent a detailed 57-page memo. It advised candidates to address the coronavirus crisis by aggressively attacking China and linking the Democrats with the Chinese government. In simpler words, Republicans want to make China a centerpiece of the 2020 campaign, and China wants to make this news the centerpiece of its victim card. The Global Times was quick to pick up this report. They published another editorial. It gave an obvious title: Political Motives Behind China Smears. It talks about the obvious, how this is all for the sake of the presidential election. It cries foul over the obvious, how the US government is blaming China for its own failures, but it misses the most obvious point, that the world is not buying China's propaganda anymore. Neither the US nor China can emerge winners here. They're both guilty of different crimes. The Chinese regime covered up an outbreak, spread the virus, sold faulty test kits, and is now threatening the world. The US government failed to act, became the epicenter, doesn't have a clue what it's doing, and chooses to threaten allies when it's out of options. These two nations are doing nothing to put out the fire that has engulfed the world. Smear campaigns are not the answer to pandemics. Transparent and timely action is.